Good afternoon. I'm here today as a registered nurse, gerontologist, and proud daughter of a Vietnam veteran to ask a difficult question. Has America forgotten its older veterans? The post-service landscape for our older veterans was much different than it is today. I know because my dad was one of them. This is my family in the mid-60s, shortly before my dad's first of 2 tours of Vietnam. This is the picture I show and the story I tell when I speak of my father's legacy. But we all have chapters of our story we don't read out loud. The truth is, my family was changed forever by the Vietnam War. After service, my father isolated us by buying a small farm on quite possibly the most remote piece of land in the Ozarks. We checked the perimeter every night, even though we couldn't see another house for miles. He chain smoked 2 packs a day and developed severe Agent Orange-related diabetes at the young age of 47. As a little girl growing up in his footsteps, when the ghosts of Vietnam visited my house, there was no Wounded Warrior Project. There was no transition assistance, no combined arms, no crisis hotline, certainly no Richard Nixon Institute set up to care for the veterans that he had sent to war. The nearest VA was 2.5 hours away, and my father wanted nothing to do with it. If my father's story was unique, I wouldn't be standing here today telling it. But there are millions of older veterans that weren't served well in their younger years. Over the last 20 years, America has appropriately turned to serving our veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. But I'm here today to remind everyone that the other half of America's 20 million veterans have quietly been growing old. Post 9/11 serving organizations understandably aren't equipped to serve the older veterans, but they are still receiving those phone calls. The Wounded Warrior Project's highly successful resource center receives roughly 10,000 calls per year from pre-9/11 older veterans that are not eligible for their full suite of services. And without private sector help, can the VA really serve 20 million veterans from 2 completely different generations when their needs are so different? If you're thinking there are already a lot of other veteran organizations that are or should be helping, I did too, until I became a hospice nurse sent to care for the sick and the old in their own homes. In one of the wealthiest parts of the country, just outside of Washington, D.C., I was seeing many older heroes living in lonely and deplorable conditions. Of course, because of my father, they touched my heart. And because I was raised by a Marine, I wasn't going to just leave them that way. I would spend hours calling, Googling, emailing, begging, trying to find help for their poor social situations. It actually became easier to just help them myself. A bag of groceries here, ride to the doctor there. I quickly became the crazy vet lady. One fateful day, I was called to do a hospice admission on a gentleman that had just been sent home from the hospital after being told he had terminal liver cancer. When I arrived at the address I'd been given, home was a tool shed that someone had rented him in their backyard. All he had was a space heater, a dirty futon to sleep on, and a box with his DD-214 and an old Vietnam service medal. It took me hours of arguing to get him transferred to an appropriate care setting. It was my breaking point. As the ambulance pulled away, I cried after years of telling myself that someone, somewhere, should start something just for these older veterans. God quietly told me I was that someone, and Heroes Bridge was born. Social isolation was by far the most common issue that I was seeing, and as a nurse, I felt the most devastating. And so I made the Battle Buddy program the foundation of everything we do at Heroes Bridge. So this program trains younger veterans and vet spouses in the community health worker model of care, which uses the magic of shared culture to serve vulnerable populations. I can share metrics with anyone interested in hearing more about this program and Heroes Bridge, but today I chose to share the stories behind the metrics. We met Larry, a 91-year-old Korean War veteran, shortly after he lost his wife of 50 years. He was deeply depressed, cried during every visit, and saw no need to go on living. Because we know that nearly 60% of all veteran suicides actually occur in older veterans, we immediately assigned him a battle buddy. He now goes on every day trip we take. He's made many new friends, and today Larry smiles once again. Joshua is a Vietnam War veteran who lives in a very rural part of Virginia. And because we know that 44% of rural veterans are considered low income and 27% have no internet access in their homes, we set Josh up with one of our Telehero tablets. It has built-in Wi-Fi, games, news, music from his era, but most importantly, instant video connection to his battle buddy. Because we know that heroes like this live all across America, Heroes Bridge began to ponder, how could they all have a battle buddy? Our vision, and my proposal here today, is to establish the first nationwide call center just for older veterans, specially curated for their needs. This wouldn't be just another referral center, though. It would be staffed with virtual battle buddies trained in our promising community health worker model of care. To establish this first of its kind call center, I'm seeking investments and partnerships from other VSOs and funders who might be interested in being more inclusive of this older generation. Partnership and support can come in many forms. I welcome all discussions on how together we can make sure that every older veteran in America has access to their battle buddy. Thank you.